AITA for warning the village about the Black Death. England, 1348. What happens when science meets faith? When knowledge meets fear? When one man sees disaster coming and nobody wants to listen? In 1348, a village doctor tried to save his community from the worst plague in human history. They called him a liar, a coward, and a heretic. Then they started dying. Welcome back to If Reddit Existed Back Then, where we explore the impossible, moral dilemmas of people throughout history. Today, we're traveling to medieval England in the year 1348, as the Black Death sweeps across Europe, killing everything in its path. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because we bring you impossible historical choices every single week. Let's read his post. R. Medieval Medicine, posted by user Physician Thomas of Wickham in the year 1348. Title: Am I the asshole for warning my village about the plague when the priest says I'm spreading fear and defying God's will? My name is Thomas of Wickham. I am 43 years old. I've been the physician of this village for 18 years. Trained at Oxford in the medical arts, apprenticed under Master Roger of Salerno, one of the finest doctors in England, I've treated broken bones, birthed babies, lanced boils, and eased the dying into their final sleep. I've seen sickness in every form: fevers, poxes, consumption, the sweating sickness. I thought I understood disease. I was wrong. 3 weeks ago, I tried to warn my village that death was coming. I told them about the pestilence sweeping across Europe, the black sickness that kills in days, the plague that's already destroyed half of Italy and France. I begged them to prepare, to isolate themselves, to avoid contact with travelers and merchants. They didn't listen. Father Edmund, the village priest, called me a fearmonger. He said the plague was God's punishment for sin, and that faith and prayer were the only protection needed. He said my warnings were causing unnecessary panic and undermining the community's trust in divine providence. Half the village turned against me. They stopped coming to my practice. They whispered that I was a coward, a charlatan, maybe even a heretic, spreading lies to undermine the church. Now, the plague is here, and everything I predicted is coming true. Let me tell you how this started, because I need you to understand. I tried. God help me. I tried. 6 months ago, I received a letter from my former teacher, Master Roger, who had traveled to Avignon to serve at the papal court. The letter was stained and crumpled, carried by a messenger who looked like he'd ridden through hell. Master Roger wrote about what he'd seen: bodies piling in the AITA streets, entire families dying within days, the Pope himself hiding in his chambers, surrounded by fires meant to purify the air, physicians dying faster than anyone because they got closest to the sick. He described the symptoms. First, the fever, then the swellings, horrible black lumps in the armpits and groin, sometimes as large as eggs. Then the bleeding under the skin, dark patches that spread like shadows. Then death, usually within 3 to 5 days. He called it the Great Mortality. He said it was spreading north, unstoppable, inevitable. He said I should prepare. His letter ended with a single line: "Pray for me, Thomas. I don't think I'll survive to write again." I never heard from him after that. I spent weeks researching everything I could find about plague: the ancient texts from Galen and Hippocrates, the Arabic writings from Avicenna and Rhazes, the reports coming out of Italy and France, each one more horrifying than the last. What I learned terrified me. The plague seemed to spread through contact, through breath, through touch, through proximity to the sick. The only places that survived were those that cut themselves off completely. Milan closed its gates and turned away all travelers. They lost a quarter of their population. The cities that stayed open lost 3/4 or more. I knew what we had to do: isolate, quarantine, avoid all contact with outsiders until the plague passed. It was our only chance. So I went to the village council. There are 12 men on our council, led by the Lord Steward, a practical man named William, and Father Edmund, who controls the spiritual life of our community. I stood before them in the great hall and laid out everything I knew. I told them about Master Roger's letter. I told them about the symptoms, the death rates, the speed of transmission. I showed them the reports from Europe, translated into English so they could understand. I explained the theory of contagion, how disease can pass from person to person through proximity and contact. And I proposed a plan: close the village to all outsiders. No merchants, no travelers, no pilgrims. Anyone who leaves the village cannot return for at least 40 days. Anyone showing symptoms must be isolated immediately, quarantined, in a separate building away from the healthy. All public gatherings, including church services, should be suspended until the danger passes. When I finished, there was silence. Then Father Edmund stood up. He's a tall man, Father Edmund, thin and severe, with eyes like chips of ice. He's been the priest here for 25 years, longer than I've been the doctor. The villagers trust him more than they trust anyone, including me. He said, "Brother Thomas, I've heard your words, and I find them troubling," I said. "Troubling? Father, I'm trying to save lives," he said. "Are you? Or are you trying to spread fear, to undermine faith in God's protection, to convince good Christian people that prayer is powerless against disease?" I said, "I'm not saying prayer is powerless. I'm saying God also gave us reason. He gave us the ability to observe, to learn, to protect ourselves. Surely he expects us to use those gifts." Father Edmund smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "The plague, if it comes, is a punishment for sin. The only protection is repentance. The only cure is faith. Your quarantine, your isolation, your closing of God's church. These are the suggestions of a man who has lost his trust in the Almighty." William the steward looked uncomfortable. He's not a stupid man. I could see him weighing my words against the priest's, trying to figure out what was true. He said, "Thomas, how certain are you that the plague will reach us? We're a small village, far from the major roads. Perhaps it will pass us by," I said. "I'm not certain of anything, but every report says the same thing. It spreads faster than anything we've seen. It doesn't discriminate between cities and villages, between rich and poor, between faithful and faithless. If it reaches England, and it will, nowhere is safe." Father Edmund shook his head. "You speak as if God has no power over disease, as if this pestilence moves by its own will, unstoppable by prayer or piety, that is dangerously close to heresy, Brother Thomas." The word hung in the air, heresy, in 1348. That word could get you killed. I chose my next words carefully. "I am a faithful son of the church. Father, I pray every day, but I also believe that God works through natural means. The plague spreads through natural means. If we understand those means, we can protect ourselves. That's not heresy, that's wisdom." The council debated for hours. In the end, they reached a compromise that satisfied no one. They agreed to discourage unnecessary travel and to designate a building outside the village for isolating anyone who showed symptoms, but they refused to close the village entirely, and they absolutely refused to suspend church services. Father Edmund said, "The people need spiritual comfort now more than ever. Taking away their church would cause more harm than any plague." I left the meeting feeling defeated. I'd hoped for too much, asked for too little, and now all I could do was wait. That was 6 weeks ago. The plague arrived 3 weeks ago. A merchant from Bristol came through, selling cloth and spices. He stayed at the inn for 2 nights, ate meals in the common room, spoke with dozens of villagers. On the 3rd day, he collapsed in the street with a fever. I examined him and saw what I'd been dreading: the swellings, the black patches under his skin, the unmistakable signs. I called for immediate quarantine. I begged the council to isolate everyone who'd had contact with him. I said we had maybe 3 days before the first local cases appeared. Father Edmund overruled me. He said the merchant should be cared for in his inn room with Christian charity. He said the innkeeper's wife, a kind woman named Margaret, should tend to him and pray for his recovery. He said panic and isolation were tools of the devil, designed to break apart Christian community. The merchant died 2 days later. Margaret died 4 days after that. Her husband died a day later, and then it spread. The first week, we lost 12 people. The second week, we lost 30. Now, at the end of the 3rd week, we've lost over 100, and more are falling sick every day. Our village had 420 people before the plague. We're down to maybe 250 now, and the dying hasn't stopped. I've barely slept in weeks. I go from house to house, trying to ease suffering, trying to slow the spread. I've tried everything: bloodletting, poultices, or herbal remedies, even the new treatments I read about from Arab physicians. Nothing works. The plague doesn't care about medicine. It takes who it takes, and all I can do is watch. But here's the worst part, the part that makes me question everything. Half the village still blames me. Father Edmund has been preaching that the plague is punishment for sin. He says the village must have harbored secret sinners, and God is purging us of their wickedness. He says my warnings were premature and caused unnecessary fear. He says if people had trusted in God, instead of panicking, the plague might have passed us by. Some villagers believe him. They come to my door at night and shout that I'm a curse on the community, that I brought this doom by speaking of it, that if I just kept quiet, none of this would have happened. Last week, someone threw a stone through my window with a note attached. It said, "Physician, heal thyself," or better yet, die. I understand their anger when everything is falling apart. When children are dying in their mother's arms, people need someone to blame. I'm an easy target. The man who predicted doom. The man who couldn't stop it. But I tried. I tried so hard, and no one listened. Yesterday, I examined Father Edmund. He came to me in secret, at night, when no one would see. He had a fever. He had swelling in his left armpit. His eyes were yellow with sickness. He knew what it meant. He grabbed my arm and said, "You were right. God forgive me. You were right. I should have listened." I said, "It's not too late for some of us. There are still survivors. If we quarantine now, truly quarantine, we might save a few dozen." He shook his head. "The village won't accept quarantine from me. Not now. They'd think I was abandoning them. You have to do it. You have to take charge." I said. "They hate me. They'll never listen to me," he said. "Then make them listen, whatever it takes." "Promise me, Thomas. Promise me you'll save whoever you can." I promised. He died this morning, Father Edmund, the man who called me a fearmonger, who said faith was better than quarantine, who convinced the council to reject my plan. He died choking on his own blood, black swellings covering his body. I don't feel satisfaction. I don't feel vindicated. I just feel tired. The village is leaderless now. William the steward died last week. Father Edmund is gone. The council is shattered. And everyone is looking at me, the doctor they blamed for everything, waiting for me to save them. So here's my question. Am I the asshole for warning the village about the plague? Did I cause panic that made things worse? Should I have kept quiet and let them face the doom in ignorance? Or was I right to speak up, even though no one listened, even though they hated me for it? I don't know anymore. All I know is that we're dying, and I don't know how to stop it. Let's check the comments from his fellow villagers and other medieval Europeans who weighed in on his impossible situation. Top comment from user William Stewardson. "My father was the steward. He died last week. Before he went, he told me he wished he'd listened to Thomas. He said the council was too afraid to act, too worried about disrupting trade and upsetting the priest. He said Thomas was the only one who saw clearly, and they punished him for it. I'm not blaming anyone. There's no point in blame now. But if anyone's still reading this, if any other villages are out there, listen to your doctors. Close your gates. Isolate the sick. Don't wait until it's too late like we did." Reply from Physician, Thomas of Wickham. "Thank you, son of William. Your father was a good man who was caught between impossible pressures. I don't blame him. I don't blame anyone." Comment from user Margaret Innkeeper, daughter. "My mother died caring for that merchant. Father Edmund told her it was her Christian duty. She didn't even hesitate. She went right in there, held his hand, prayed with him, wiped his brow, and now she's dead. My father is dead. My brother is dead. I'm the only one left. Thomas tried to warn us. We didn't listen. Now my whole family is gone." Comment from user Father Benedict of York. "I am a priest in York. I've been following these reports with horror. Father Edmund was wrong. Terribly, tragically wrong. The church teaches compassion, yes, but it also teaches prudence. God gave us reason so that we might protect ourselves and our communities. Quarantine is not a rejection of faith. It is the responsible exercise of the wisdom God granted us. I pray for the souls of Wickham, and I pray that other villages learn from this tragedy." Comment from users Anonymous villager. "I threw that stone through your window, Thomas. I'm not proud of it. I was scared and angry, and I needed someone to blame. But you were right. You were right about everything. My wife is sick now. My children are terrified. And I'm the one who should be ashamed. Not you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Reply from Physician Thomas of Wickham. "Come to my house. Bring your wife. I'll do everything I can." Comment from user Monk from Avignon. "I served at the papal court when the plague arrived. I watched physicians die by the dozen. I watched cardinals flee in the night. I watched the Holy Father himself cower behind walls of fire, and I watched common people die in the streets with no one to comfort them. Thomas of Wycombe did what no one at Avignon did. He tried to warn his people. He tried to save them. That they didn't listen is not his fault. That they blamed him is humanity's eternal shame. We always kill the prophets. Then we weep when their prophecies come true. Comment from user Blacksmith John. I hated you, Thomas. I thought you were trying to destroy our village with fear. I refused to let you examine my family when the fever came. I said, God would protect us. Now my wife and 3 of my 4 children are dead. The youngest, little Mary, she's still alive but barely. She asks for her mother every night. I have no answer for her. You were right. We were fools. God forgive us. We were fools. Comment from user Merchant. From London, I trade between villages. I've seen what the plague does. I've seen villages that quarantined early and lost maybe a quarter of their people. I've seen villages that did nothing and lost everyone. Everyone. Not a single survivor. Thomas of Wycombe tried to save his community. The fact that they didn't listen doesn't make him wrong. It makes them tragic. Learn from Wycombe. Close your gates. Save who you can. Comment from user Flagellant Brother. The plague is God's punishment. The only cure is repentance. We march from town to town, whipping ourselves bloody, begging for divine mercy. Join us. Pain is the path to salvation. Reply from a physician, Thomas of Wycombe. With respect, brother, your flagellants spread the plague faster than any merchant. You travel in groups. You gather crowds. You move from village to village. You're not curing anything. You're spreading death. Reply from flagellant brother, heretic. Comment from user Surviving Child Anna. I'm 8 years old. My mama helped me write this. The doctor saved us. When my papa got sick, he made us leave the house and stay in the barn, away from everyone. Mama didn't want to, but the doctor said it was the only way. Papa died, but we didn't get sick. The doctor visits us every day to make sure we're okay. He brings us food and water. I think he's the nicest man in the village. I don't understand why people are mean to him. Reply from physician, Thomas of Wycombe. Stay in the barn, little Anna. Stay away from everyone until I tell you it's safe. You and your mother are going to survive this. I promise. Comment from user Gravedigger Robert. I've buried 147 bodies in 3 weeks. I can't dig fast enough. The ground is frozen and my shovel keeps breaking. I've started burning the dead instead. The smoke hangs over the village day and night. I don't sleep anymore. I just dig and burn. Dig and burn. Thomas tried to warn us. We should have listened. Now all I do is dig. 2 months after the original post, an update appeared. Update from physician Thomas of Wycombe. It's over, at least. I think it's over. No new cases in 12 days. We started with 420 souls. We ended with 118. 70%. We lost 70% of our village. Mothers, fathers, children, elders, the blacksmith and his family, the innkeeper and his wife, the steward, the priest, the miller, the baker, the shepherd, and all but 3 of his sheep gone. All of them gone, but some survived, and I need to believe that matters. After Father Edmund died, I took charge. I didn't ask permission. There was no one left to give it. I simply started giving orders, and people were too exhausted and terrified to argue. I established a true quarantine. The sick were moved to the old barn on the edge of the village. Healthy families were told to stay in their homes, with food delivered to their doors. Anyone who had to go outside wore cloth masks soaked in vinegar, a treatment I'd read about in the Arab texts. I don't know if it helped, but it gave people something to do, something to believe in. I divided the village into sections. Each section was isolated from the others. If someone got sick in one section, only that section was affected. The others stayed clean. It wasn't perfect. People broke quarantine. Some couldn't bear to be separated from dying loved ones. Some didn't believe the rules applied to them. Every breach cost lives. But it worked. Slowly, painfully, the plague burned itself out. The last case was a boy named Thomas, named after me. Ironically, he survived. One of the few who got sick and lived. I don't know why some survive and others don't. I'll probably never know. Yesterday, we held a service for the dead. There's no priest anymore, so I led it myself. I'm not ordained, but no one complained. We gathered in the churchyard, all 118 of us, and we read the names of the dead. It took 2 hours. When we finished old Martha, who's 80 years old, and somehow survived while her entire family died around her, she came up to me and took my hand. She said, "You tried to save us. You warned us, and we didn't listen. But when everything fell apart, you were still here. You didn't run. You didn't give up. You stayed and fought for us. Whatever happens next, we won't forget that." I cried. For the first time since this started, I let myself cry. The village will rebuild. It will take years, maybe decades. We'll need new families to move in, new births to replace the dead. The fields will lie fallow this season because there aren't enough hands to work them. Winter will be hard. But we'll survive. We always do. I've started writing down everything I learned, everything that worked, everything that didn't, how the plague spreads, how to slow it, how to protect the healthy while caring for the sick. I'm sending copies to every physician I know, every university, every church that will listen. Maybe the next village will do better. Maybe they'll listen to their doctors when they warn of danger. Maybe they won't wait until the bodies are piling up to take action. Or maybe they'll do exactly what we did. Deny the danger, trust in faith over reason, blame the messenger for the message. I don't know. I can't control what other people do. I can only control what I do. And what I'm going to do is keep practicing medicine, keep trying to save lives, keep warning people about dangers, even when they don't want to hear it, because that's what doctors do. We tell uncomfortable truths. We fight battles we can't win. We hold dying hands and pretend we're not afraid. Someone asked me if I regret speaking up, if I'd do it again, knowing how they'd react, knowing they'd hate me for it. The answer is yes. Absolutely yes. Because even if only one person listened, even if only one family quarantined early, even if I only saved a single life, it was worth it. 118 people are alive today. Maybe some of them survived because of what I did. Maybe not. I'll never know for certain. But I tried, and that's all any of us can do. Final comment from user Historian from the Future. The Black Death killed between 75 and 200 million people in Europe between 1347 and 1351. It was the deadliest pandemic in human history, wiping out 30 to 60% of Europe's population. Villages like Wycombe were devastated. Some disappeared entirely, but Thomas of Wycomb's approach, quarantine, isolation, avoiding contact with the sick. These are the same principles that would eventually become standard practice in dealing with infectious disease. He was centuries ahead of his time. Most people didn't understand germ theory until the 1800s. Thomas understood intuitively that disease spreads through contact, and he tried to act on that understanding. The tragedy is not that he warned them. The tragedy is that they didn't listen. 500 years later, we face new plagues, new diseases, and we still have the same arguments. Faith versus science. Freedom versus quarantine, individual rights versus collective safety. Thomas of Wycombe couldn't save everyone, but he saved who he could, and he left behind knowledge that might save others. That's his legacy. That's all any of us can hope for. This is the story of Thomas of Wycombe, a doctor who saw death coming and tried to sound the alarm, a man who was hated for telling the truth, a healer who couldn't heal everyone but refused to stop trying. The Black Death changed Europe forever. It ended feudalism, transformed the economy, and reshaped society in ways that are still felt today. Out of unimaginable suffering came change, progress, and eventually a better understanding of disease. Thomas didn't live to see that progress. He died 12 years after the plague, of natural causes, still practicing medicine, still warning people, still fighting battles he couldn't win. But his notes survived. His methods were passed down, and somewhere in the long chain of medical knowledge that leads from 1348 to today, there's a link that traces back to a village doctor who refused to stay silent. If you're still watching, thank you. If you learned something, share this video. And if you ever find yourself facing a choice between comfortable silence and uncomfortable truth, remember, Thomas, sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do. Do it anyway. Next time, we're going to ancient Greece, where a philosopher must decide whether to teach forbidden knowledge to his daughter in a world that says women cannot learn. Drop a comment. Would you have kept warning the village even after they turned against you? Is it worth telling people the truth when they don't want to hear it? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and remember, history isn't just plagues and death. It's the people who fought against them, people who refused to give up, people who deserve to be remembered. See you next time.